Hi everyone, another month, another recap of everything I saw on stage. I realized that no one knows me and I should probably introduce myself. So hi, my name is Ethan. I'm a student at New York University studying journalism and dramatic literature, and seeing theater is kind of my part-time job, except I lose money instead of earning any. I work for NYU School Paper and also have a really cool letterboxd. These videos focus on plays and musicals, but I also see some opera, concerts and dance, and many student productions. This April I saw 16 things on stage. To kick off April, I'll briefly mention two NYU student productions I saw. They were both 45-minute shows part of the Playwrights Horizons Festival. First was Joyland, a musical that my friend wrote the book of, kind of about a guy in a twisted theme park trying to reunite with his girlfriend. Second was The Sound of a Voice, a David Henry Hwang one-act about the romance between a wandering samurai and a secluded woman. I had a good, fun time at both. After that, I had one of the most successful and busiest days I've ever had on Saturday, starting at 12 p.m. with the last show of Tristan und Isolde at the Metropolitan Opera. This is one of Wagner's quote-unquote music dramas. It has very little plot, but broadly explores love, desire, passion, and power. I've been doing preparation for this performance for literally months at this point. I knew going in that Wagner's music was rich and complex, so I didn't want to go in blind. I was listening to the Berliner cast album of Tristan, conducted by Daniel Barenboim, literally all the time. Walking to school, on runs, doing my homework, literally immersing myself in the world. And let me tell you, as soon as the Met Orchestra started playing the prelude, I just had chills upon chills. To hear this incomparable music that I'd fallen in love with in person with a full orchestra, there was no better feeling, truly. As a whole, Tristan was a bit funny because I would describe it as only half good, but the part that was good was so astronomically good that it made the entire experience transcendental. Honestly, you could call the entire opera just Isolde, because I literally could not hear Stuart Skelton, who is singing Tristan, half the time. Yes, I was singing in the furthest box seats, and I had read that the conductor had issues balancing the orchestra with the singers, and yes, Skelton only performed this one day, so I'm not sure how familiar he was with the staging, but I just couldn't hear him, unfortunately. Especially compared to Lisa Davidson singing Isolde. Oh my god. I've developed a bit of an obsession with Lisa because her top register is just so rich and powerful. If you want to hear what I'm talking about, I would recommend listening to her NPR Tiny Desk or clips of her singing Ariadne in Strauss's Ariadne auf Naxos. What an absolute powerhouse, truly incredible. Isolde has this incredible aria, I don't even want to call it an aria because it's more of a music drama experience that ends the show that's called the Liebestod. And hearing Lisa singing the Liebestod, I will keep that with me forever. Finally, the best moment of Tristan, or maybe the most cathartic, was somehow the bows. It's just this feeling of applauding with everyone else in that cavernous opera house, knowing you're all there to support this art wholeheartedly. The rush of applause when Lisa came on stage for her bow at the end, there's little moments where I remember feeling that amount of pure energy in a theater. By the way, Tristan was 5 hours long, and then I followed that up with Becky Shaw on Broadway, which was 2 hours 20. So in total on Saturday, I spent 7.5 hours inside a theater, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way because Becky Shaw was an absolute banger as well. This play is written by Gina Gianfrido and directed by Trip Coleman in a second stage theater production at the Hayes Theater. The premise of the show is that a blind date spirals out of control, though it's really more about modern dating, trauma, dependency, etc. I thought that Becky Shaw was pretty incredible. It kind of revived my faith in Broadway. It's the first show I've seen this season that I can fully get behind with no qualms. Of course, I have to mention that I wrote a review of Becky Shaw for WSN. You should check it out. I'm honestly smarter in text than I am in words, so you'll get a much more intelligent take there. I'll just say here that Alden Ehrenreich should win the Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Play. He's doing some sensational stuff here. Next Monday, I was back at the Met seeing the New York premiere of the Finnish composer Kaija Saariaho's final opera, Innocence. This is, again, not a traditional Italian-type opera. It's pretty pared down, more like a piece of intense music drama. Innocence follows two timelines. First, at a wedding, a waitress recognizes the groom's family. It turns out that the groom's brother perpetrated a school shooting 10 years ago at an international school, claiming the lives of many, including the waitress's daughter. I know that Innocence is a tough sell due to its subject matter, but I've been really interested in this opera ever since I saw it in San Francisco almost 2 years ago in the summer of 2024. That was the first opera I had ever seen, and I was absolutely floored. So I was really looking forward to experiencing this intense opera again on the biggest stage in America. To be honest, seeing Innocence again, I think it lost a bit of its emotional potency. I think part of this was
my seat. It was kind of crazy. I sat in the nosebleeds for Tristan like 2 days before, and for Innocence, I was in the third row of the orchestra, which means I saw everyone's faces, but the sound quality wasn't as good, to be honest. And Innocence has a lot of stylized movement and like quasi-dance that I didn't notice in the back row in San Francisco, but I definitely saw in the orchestra level. I saw it and I'm not sure I liked it. I read this essay by the composer Matthew Aucoin about Innocence, and I agree with a lot of his points about the show, particularly this line. Innocence displays Sarajevo at her most masterful, but not her most profound. The best parts of Innocence were, one, this forceful score, played by the top-notch Met Orchestra and conducted by Susanna Malki, a longtime collaborator of Sarajevo's. And also the singers. Vilma Ya sings the ghostly appearance of the daughter with like Finnish herding calls, which sound like cuts from her soul. Seriously, look up her singing. I guarantee you never heard anything like it before. By the time this video comes out, Innocence will have closed up the Met. But I do truly hope this production has another life somewhere in the future, and more people will know and appreciate Sarajevo's incredible work. That Friday, I went to see Jesa off-Broadway. This was at the Public Theater, but was presented by the Ma Yi Theater Company, which is a premier Asian American play company. This play is written by Gina Yi and directed by May Ann Teo. Jesa follows 4 Korean American sisters who reunite at their family home to perform the titular ritual to honor the dead. I am incredibly sad to report that I did not like Jesa at all. And to be honest, a lot of the things on my mind when I got out of Jesa were not very nice. So it's best here to focus on the positive. I really liked the parts where they actually did the ritual. I appreciated the feeling of getting to sit in on a sacred tradition. And I was a big fan of Shannon Tayo's performance, even if I had issues with how every character was written. I thought Shannon did a great job with a lot of contradictions in her character, just super truthful acting. I loved her in Yellowface on Broadway last year as well, and was really glad to see her again. On Saturday, I saw a production at NYU Tish's Atlantic Acting School, Stupid Effing Bird by Aaron Posner. This is a sort of modern retelling of Anton Chekhov's play The Seagull that is very meta and fourth wall breaking and all that jazz. I had a fun time at Stupid Bird, but I will say that as a rabid fan of The Seagull, I kinda did wish I was just seeing this great cast perform Chekhov's words rather than Aaron's. The next Thursday, I went to Manhattan Theater Club to see David Lindsay Abair's The Balusters, directed by Kenny Leon. This is a world premiere play at the Friedman Theater, an ensemble drama following the members of the Vernon Point Neighborhood Association, and what happens when a newcomer, played by Anikadoni Rose, suggests building a stop sign on the neighborhood's most picturesque street. I went into The Balusters pretty excited, to be honest. I'd heard great things about David Lindsay Abair's previous works, although I had never seen any of his shows. And I thought it was really exciting that MTC was hosting the world premiere of his new play on Broadway. But as the play continued, I kinda just started asking myself, why? And I think the most confusing part about The Balusters is that Broadway had already seen it before. Like just last year. I'm talking about Jonathan Spector's play Eureka Day, which also followed board meetings of supposed liberals and critiqued the onslaught of woke, etc. And I do think that we should judge new plays on their own merits, but it's impossible to ignore the comparison, especially considering Eureka Day was on Broadway, also at the Friedman, also in an MTC production. Like, I was literally sitting in the same theater a year ago, watching an incredibly similar play, not just in themes, but in the structure of the show itself. And while I didn't absolutely adore Eureka Day, I did find it to be a stronger, more specific, and more tightly focused piece than The Balusters. I just think that there's not a lot going on underneath the surface of pretty much all of Abair's characters in the show. Debate plays like this require a lot of inner motivation to justify arguments the characters have. Everything in The Balusters is pretty surface level. This all isn't to say that I hated it. I think The Balusters is a fun time. Extra shout out to Emilio Sosa's costume design. Everyone has some pretty great contemporary fits. The best part of The Balusters was the performances, especially Mary Louise Burke, Michael Esper, and Maria Cristina Oliveras. Her especially, I found her character to be the most compelling, and I really loved her since seeing her in Cymbeline off-Broadway last year. Otherwise, just somewhat disappointed by The Balusters. The next day, I started my roundabout weekend by seeing their production of Fallen Angels, written by Noel Coward and directed by Scott Ellis. This is at their Todd Hames Theater, and starring the 2 acting luminaries Rose Byrne and Kelly O'Hara, as 2 women awaiting the arrival of a Frenchman that they both had sex with before they were married, with nothing but champagne and cigarettes to pass the time. I did actually write a review of Fallen Angels, and I generally did like this show, though it's clear that Scott Ellis kinda just let Rose and Kelly do whatever they wanted without having a real anchoring vision for the show. But honestly, lucky for us, because the 2 are doing some absolutely fabulous comedic work in this. There's this one bit where the 2 are absolutely hammered and just trying to light their cigarettes, and that journey they go on is reason enough to see Fallen Angels. I followed Fallen Angels with Richard O'Brien's The Rocky Horror Show at Roundabout Studios
Studio 54. I don't even know how to describe Rocky Horror. It's this trashy musical turned cult classic movie turned audience participation experience about like aliens and queer identity and sexuality and everything. Sam Pinkleton directs this arrival for Broadway and has a great cast led by Luke Evans and also featuring my goats Stephanie Hsu and Andrew Durand as the couple who stumble into this new world. Neither me nor my friend had ever seen the movie of Rocky Horror before, so I would say the prevailing feeling we both had was definitely confusion. Like, during the first act, I could follow it okay, but then Act 2 kind of completely lost me by the end. There were times where my brain could recognize that they were saying lines or singing lyrics, but it just did not register as having any meaning. This is not to say I had a bad time Rocky Horror. I think this production is incredibly fun, but there is something to be said about how maybe Sam's direction is leaning into the shock value angle, rather than trying to introduce this show to a new generation or mining the material for an actual dramatic show. I will mention that Rocky Horror is actually designed very well. Roundabout definitely spent money on this production. The set design by Dots is great as usual, and the lighting and costumes were also on point. And it is well acted. My personal highlights were Stephanie and Andrew, of course, but also Rachel Dratch as the narrator and Josh Rivera as Rocky. But unfortunately, as many have said, Juliette Lewis and Michele J. Rodriguez are genuinely not good in this. I have no idea who let Michele do a Mickey Mouse impression for the entire show. So, Rocky Horror, I found this to be a fun enough time, if a bit nonsensical. And I was out there participating, yelling out a bit, singing out Louise a bit, having a grand time, and maybe this production of Rocky Horror is genuinely justified by like a single 5 seconds of stage time with Andrew Durand and Luke Evans doing something. If you've seen the show, you know exactly what I mean, and if you haven't, well, I'll keep you in anticipation. On Monday, I went to Playwrights Horizons to see Rheology, the play by Shayak Misha Chowdhury in collaboration with his actual mother, Bulbul Chakraborty, who is a physicist and professor. This is an experimental theater piece where Misha asks his mother to act out her death because he's afraid that he won't be able to keep living alone. I did write a review of Rheology, so again, you should check it out. Sorry, not sorry for the shameless self-promo in this video. I will expand a bit here because I thought Rheology was really fascinating, and I think this has to do with Bulbul's incredible acting. I mean, she's like a physicist at Brandeis, but somehow turned in one of the best performances I've seen all year. She got an Obie last year for this play, which was so well deserved. The extended monologue she has at the end really got to me. Just so heartfelt and powerful. Also, I have to mention one of the most embarrassing audience interaction moments I've ever witnessed. The beginning of Rheology is this physics lecture where Bulbul is like teaching the states of matter to us and introducing us to her research. And as a part of this, she was asking the audience questions. And there was this one person in the audience, a man, who just would not shut up. He had this condescending tone and he just kept piping up to be like, I think this is how physics works. And Bulbul handled it with grace, but oh my god, I just wanted him to shut up. Like, there's no way you're trying to mansplain physics to a literal renowned physicist, never mind the fact that you were here to watch a play in the first place. Anyways, that was insane. That Thursday, I went to David Geffen Hall to see the New York Philharmonic play. This was a special performance led by Barbara Hannigan, a Canadian conductor and soprano. The program was Strauss's Metamorphosen and Poulenc's opera La Voix humaine, based on the Jean Cocteau play The Human Voice. I was embarrassingly pretty late to this performance, so I had to watch Metamorphosen from the lobby of the Geffen, which has live broadcasts of the sound and video from the hall, which was fun, but the real event that everyone was excited for was La Voix humaine, because Barbara was both conducting it and singing it at the same time. The original play, The Human Voice, is a one-woman show where the actor speaks on the phone to her departing lover, slowly realizing that he isn't coming back to her. The opera is basically the same thing but sung. Barbara's version was first off exhausting to watch, because she's singing her face off while doing like full-body choreography while conducting, and she has to play to 3 different cameras that are live broadcasting her a la Jamie Lloyd's Sunset Boulevard. It was an insane feat, though I'm not entirely convinced it worked or added something to the opera. I was reading some reviews after, and I agree that it felt somewhat narcissistic to have your lead singer on this podium staring at a giant video of herself and chasing these cameras. But I felt it was actually kind of Brechtian in a way for Barbara to be both the main character within the opera and the conductor of the music, like both a performer on the inside and an orchestrator on the outside. Very interesting performance, and kudos to Barbara to even be able to pull this off. The next day, I saw The Lost Boys on Broadway, the new vampire musical based on the 1987 cult movie of the same name. This musical musical is directed by Michael Arden with scenic design by Dane Laffrey, and those two are honestly the two most important people involved with the creation of The Lost Boys. The musical follows a family, Mother Lucy, played by Shoshana Bean, with two sons Michael and Sam, played by LJ Bennett and Benjamin Pajak, who moved to a beach town in California that is inhabited by vampires. I had never seen the movie before, though I had heard of it mostly because I actually come from California / the Bay Area, and I've been to the Santa Cruz boardwalk where Lost Boys was filmed. And I overall thought that this musical adaptation was fine. In terms of the book and music, it's very lackluster. There are some tunes maybe in here, but it all feels like it's coming from people whose only knowledge of musical theater is of Pasek and Paul pop rock ballads. Like, Michael has a song called Belong to Someone at the end of Act 1 that literally feels like an alternate version of You'll Be Found from Jervin Hansen. Also, I'm gonna sound like Patty LuPone when I say this, but it was way too loud. My rush ticket placed me right below the speakers, which hurt my ears so bad that I asked to be moved further back, where it still felt too loud. The positive of The Lost Boys is that, as with many things this month, it is a fun time. Dane Laffrey's set is really expansive and very well utilized by Michael Arden, who put some enjoyable acrobatic work into this. The best part by far is Ali Louis Borzgui's performance as the lead vampire David. He has such a unique and dark voice, which fits perfectly, and he nails this villain performance because he's unpredictable. You never truly know what's coming next for him. Shoshana Bean is good, I like her voice. Paul Alexander Nolan is pretty underutilized, and Benjamin Pajak was endearing. The most insane part of this show was when he sang a whole song about how being gay is his superpower, and then Michael Arden brought out the entire ensemble in rainbow-colored spandex to dance behind him. I was truly shocked to tears by that. The next day, I saw another NYU show, the grad acting program's production of The Imaginary Invalid, written by the French master of farce Molière. I wanted to see this because this is the same version of the show that's coming to Broadway, adapted by Bill Irwin and directed by Brandon J. Durden, who's a professor at grad acting. I thought this was fine, probably the weakest grad acting production I've ever seen, though it did make me curious to see how it would scale up for Broadway, and also who they would cast. That evening I went to see Proof on Broadway. This is the revival of the David Auburn play, now directed by Thomas Kail and starring Io Debris in her Broadway debut as Catherine, the tortured, nerdy math girl of so many adolescence monologues. She is joined by Don Cheadle as Robert, her father, Cara Young as Claire, her sister, and Jin Ha as Hao, one of Robert's proteges. Proof is a play that I had read before because of how famous it was. It was a Pulitzer Prize winner, and to be honest, when I read it, I was just like, this is a fine play. Like, nothing really sensational jumped out of the page at me. Seeing it on Broadway, unfortunately that perception did not change. I think this has to do with Tommy's direction, which is very uneven. The way he uses the set and makes scene transitions with these like moving light strips around the edge of the house are just very ugly and jarring, and he wasn't really able to shape this cast into giving great performances. Don Cheadle is pretty good in a very casual way. Jin Ha doesn't really have much to work with, but he's solid, but Io suffers the most from this misdirection. She is actually doing a good job at playing a girl who's just like mad and sad at the world. Maybe because I had really good seats, but I thought a lot of her smaller choices really registered with me. The issue is that if you're leading a play like Proof, you're gonna need to be more interesting and dynamic than just mad and sad, which I think a different director could have helped Io find. And this is even more apparent when she's acting against Cara Young, who manages to find such strange and interesting idiosyncrasies in Claire, who is probably the most boring character on paper. Honestly, I just want them to do like a Cara Young as Kathy in Proof, one night only event. I swear our tickets would sell out in a heartbeat. To close out April, I went to NYU to see a concert production of the musical On the Town, with music by Leonard Bernstein and lyrics by Comden and Green. This concert was a collaboration between the NYU Broadway Orchestra and the Vocal Performance Program, and it was conducted by Ted Sperling, who orchestrated Lay in the Piazza and conducted its run, as well as conducted many other musicals on Broadway, like the recent Floyd Collins and all of the Bartlett Share / Lincoln Center Golden Age revivals. On the Town follows 3 sailors on a 24-hour shore leave in New York City during World War II, who each find a girl to pursue. I really loved this performance, of course because of the incredible music Bernstein wrote, which was given such an expert rendition here. I've been listening to the 1960 cast album a lot since, and I genuinely think the music for The Great Lover Pas de Deux is one of the most overwhelming things I've ever heard. Discovering this incredible music honestly just made me depressed, because looking at the musicals that opened this year, I don't think we will remember a single one of these in 75 years like we remember this one. Like, in 75 years, the NYU Broadway Orchestra won't be doing concert productions of beaches. It just makes me sad about the current state of musical theater, but also grateful that we still have these musicals from the past to look to. On the Town is truly great though, and I would kill to see a full production with a talented choreographer to mount all of the dream ballets. And that was April. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and please leave a comment. If you saw any of these shows, let me know what you thought, especially if you greatly disagreed with my opinion. Subscribe to get notifications. I think the next video up is the big Tony Awards video, so definitely keep an eye out for that. I'll see you guys next time. For now, it's time for me to rewatch Megan Fairchild and Tony Yazbek in one of On the Town's ballets. Bye!